We mentioned in a recent episode how a lot of these humanoid robotic demos and reveals that we've seen at tech shows recently have been remotely controlled by humans. Well, that remote control is part of what's helping gather this movement data and behavior data for these LBMs. After having taken in all of that data, these models can then use machine learning techniques to look for patterns and relationships in that data. And much like an LLM basically just guesses the next most likely word, the LBM is going to try and guess the next necessary action or likely action or behavior. And the goal is to create an autonomously behaving system, like or a robot or a model that adapts dynamically to new situations and can change its behavior based on what is happening in those situations, much like a human does. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the AI Marketing Navigator. This is your daily compass in the ever-evolving world of AI marketing. Okay, navigators, today we are going to do a discussion on something new that I learned in the world of artificial intelligence, and I wanted to share it with all of you on the show today, and that is a large behavior model, or an LBM. We're going to talk a little bit about what a large behavior model is and compare and contrast it with a large language model, an LLM, which we've heard a lot about. So put your learning caps on today, unless you already know what a large behavior model is. If that's you, kudos to you, congratulations. Definitely reach out and let me know if I missed anything in our summary today. Hopefully you'll at least pick up something new about them right here. Or maybe you find the AI Marketing Navigator entertaining enough to sit through another short description and explanation. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about what a large behavior model is. These are artificial intelligence models that are designed to predict and model human behavior. Unlike large language models, LLMs, which are trained on vast amounts of text data and generate primarily text. LBMs are particularly useful and relevant in robotics and any AI systems that require an understanding or an ability to replicate human actions in certain environments. To put it simply, LBMs are more about actions and behaviors, and LLMs are more about language and text. So let's dive a little bit more into what an LBM is and how it works. LBMs are trained on large data sets, just like LLMs, but these data sets specifically include observations of human behavior. And often the input to these data sets or the input of these data sets is video data or sensor data. For example, sensor data that's been gathered from robots that are interacting with their environment. We mentioned in a recent episode how a lot of these humanoid robotic demos and reveals that we've seen at tech shows recently have been remotely controlled by humans. Well, that remote control is part of what's helping gather this movement data and behavior data for these LBMs. After having taken in all of that data, these models can then use machine learning techniques to look for patterns and relationships in that data. And much like an LLM basically just guesses the next most likely word, the LBM is going to try and guess the next necessary action or likely action or behavior. And the goal is to create an autonomously behaving system, like or a robot or a model that adapts dynamically to new situations and can change its behavior based on what is happening in those situations, much like a human does. So let's also talk a little bit more about how LBMs and LLMs are different in their structure and how they're trained. Again, both models are being fed large amounts of data and algorithms, but there are key difference in the methods by which they train in the architecture with which they're built. LLMs are usually built on transformer architectures and are trained are often training themselves in a way, iteratively using self-supervised learning techniques to consistently improve their responses and their answers. On the other hand, LBMs are trained via reinforcement learning or imitation learning to train on situational and behavioral data. And this involves taking the robot through actions and scenarios to reinforce how it should behave, or having the robot imitate certain movements, maybe by having someone remotely control the robot, for instance. And these are how LBMs are going to be trained versus an internal self-training, self-reviewing methodology that an LLM uses. Of course, these LBMs have a wide range of use cases that have a ton of potential to change a variety of industries. The primary use case that we mentioned already is robotics, but also in autonomous vehicles and even healthcare. An LBM can be specifically trained to maybe model patient behavior and take patient behavior and demographics into account when predicting health outcomes and possibly being able to identify and offer more personalized, more impactful medical interventions for those patients. In robotics, these LBMs are going to be used and are primarily being used to teach robots how to behave, typically from human demonstrations or human imitation. Again, LBMs are already being used in the real world to affect and advance robotics, especially, particularly by the Toyota Research Institute, as well as Boston Dynamics, who have actually partnered together despite being owned by competing companies, which is a little tidbit that I picked up from the recent Rundown.ai newsletter. There's our daily plug for the Rundown.ai newsletter. You should definitely go check it out. It's where I get all my AI news. Anyway, despite being competitors, Boston Dynamics and Toyota have teamed up and are using LBMs to develop their robotics using something called a telepresence system, which allows the robots to learn from human demonstrations and then practice and iterate and refine the skills through simulation. The partnership is also seeking to develop quote unquote whole body behavior models, which would again be specific to humanoid robots. So as we continue to see advancements in robotics specifically, and all these companies that pop up pushing the new and next humanoid robot butler or robot assistant, definitely expect to hear a lot more about LBMs, large behavior models, in place of LLMs, large language models. Okay, that does it for today's episode. If you enjoyed the show or learned something or found it useful in any way, please do me a favor and follow on Spotify or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. A review on top of that would be even more appreciated and is so super helpful to the show. So until next time, and as always, thanks for joining me, and remember to stay curious, stay consistent, and keep navigating forward. Bye.